1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Soundcheck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Monday show live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. We are live. It is the Monday show, the first show following Everton's 3-1 win over Fulham. I am your host, Ian Croll, and joining me in the Royal Blue studio today to talk all things Everton, we've got Joe Thomas. Joe, big smile on your face there. How are things? All good?
Yeah, good. Really good trip down to Craven Cottage, at least from the 45th minute onwards.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Would have a very different look on my face, I think, if things had carried on before the way they were going before that. Very, very fortunate Mykolenko goal. But like I said the other day, deserves something like down at Craven Cottage. So
yeah,
we'll take it, and they exploited it to great effect.
Absolutely. And I saw you before, and you were basking in the glories of the Thames and taking pictures and stuff like that. What was the obviously good weather down there as well?
Oh yeah, fantastic day. It's a lovely part of the world. Far too expensive for me.
Really?
I couldn't survive down there, but being able to go down there on the work coin for for a game, you at least get to kind of have a little glimpse at what the world looks like for the other half. I don't know. We've got Dan Haygarth with us. Maybe he can talk us what it's like to live that lifestyle coming up.
Well, yeah, it's very nice, London, isn't it? I think Fulham's the best away day, I think, in the country by a long way. Yeah, it's just beautiful. Very different from most walks to most football grounds, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Once you get off at Putney Bridge and walk down.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. There's a lovely old church just on the corner nearby. We cut through the grounds and through Bishop's Park, and all of a sudden we have a podcast audience getting very bored.
Well, Joe, you've already given his introduction, but late addition to the podcast today, Dan Haygarth. Dan, thank you for coming on. We were saying it's not your first rodeo. This is fourth, fifth appearance on the show.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah. Always happy to be here. It's nice place to spend the afternoon.
Yeah, and we'll get into this, but you are obviously, Joe is going to be in Goodison on Sunday for the final game, so am I, but you're going to be in and around Goodison as well. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, very much so, yeah. Be around the ground, chatting to fans before and after the game, really. Just such a big day, isn't it? Sort of getting people's sort of instant reactions when they leave the ground for what could be the last time, I guess. So, yeah, it's going to be emotional, but looking forward to it in a way, yeah.
Okay, well, today's agenda, obviously, we are going to look back at the win at Craven Cottage. Plenty of other bits to get through as well. Some bits actually left over from Friday's pod, which we did run over, so we will go back and discuss that. So, in short, the agenda will consist of Fulham reaction win, Abdoulaye Doucouré's future, Michael Keane's future, Goodison Park's future. It is all a bit future heavy, isn't it, at this moment in time? But stick with us. Get your comments in, get your questions in on the stream. And if you're listening or watching after the fact, then a big hello to you as well. Just before we officially do get going for Joe's initial thoughts on Fulham, I just basically want to run through this week's podcast schedule because it is a busy one. It is going to be a busy week. So obviously we've got today's show, which is live now and will be out on all audio platforms this afternoon. But for the rest of the week, we've got a busy week. Tomorrow, me, Paul Wheelock and a fan guest are going to record a Goodison Park special. We're basically going to discuss things, our best ever match, best ever goal that we've witnessed, our worst ever match, best moments, those sorts of things are going to be on the agenda. And that podcast that we are going to record tomorrow is going to be out on Monday, the 19th of May. So that is the day after the final game. I've booked that Monday off because I'm worried that I'm going to have a hangover. So doing a pre-record, and that is the podcast for that day. The reaction podcast to Goodison Park's final game, which will be Tuesday the 20th, and that will be with me and Chris Beasley. Wednesday, which is this Wednesday, will be live as normal. I'm going to be joined by Conor O'Neill and Tony Scott for the normal Wednesday show, but also on the same day, So that'll be Wednesday the 14th. We are recording Rotterdam European Cup Winners' Cup Final special. And that's going to be with Chris Beasley, Gav Buckland, and another fan guest. And that will be out on the anniversary, which is the 40th anniversary. And that is the Thursday the 15th, so the following day. So that will be a quick turnaround for that. And then this Friday, we'll obviously have the normal Friday show, and that'll be live. Not entirely sure on the time on that yet, but we'll keep an eye on David Moyes' press conference, and we'll let you know. So that'll be build up to Goodison Park's final ever game. Line up to be confirmed for that one. But it is a busy week, and plenty of content on offer on the Royal Blue YouTube channel, as well as the Liverpool Echo website. So, Joe, that was a mouthful for me. So I'm going to let you speak now. Obviously, 3-1 win, no complaints. Surprised me, to be honest, because I didn't think we'd win. I thought we'd get a draw. But either way, fantastic result, and a really, positive sign to be on a good end of a comeback.
Yeah, I mean, you say no complaints. I think it probably wasn't going to be that way for a big chunk of Saturday. Well, I've got to be perfectly honest. I think when the team news dropped and we saw the changes, I've got to be perfectly honest, I was anticipating a very long afternoon at that point. Obviously, some of those changes are enforced and some of them are understandable. We know that David Moyes doesn't have a huge amount to play around with. Jake O'Brien picked up a knee injury. They don't think it's serious. I don't think it's going to end his season or anything like that. And that happened on Friday, which is why we didn't hear about it in the press conference. But obviously, the only option there is Michael Keane. I'm relatively positive on Michael Keane anyway in comparison to, I know what some people think of him. Ashley Young coming in for Nathan Patterson. Patterson struggled in the chances he's had recently. I think I would have probably preferred to just carried on playing Patterson just because I feel like there's something that you're trying to learn there. I'm assuming that Coleman will probably start against Southampton on Sunday for all the obvious reasons. If you want to be as fair as you can to Patterson, you give him a run of games because he's had so long out of it to try and prove himself. But I don't think he's made a strong enough case to be able to be that disappointed by being dropped. Abdoulaye Doucouré came in. I don't think that's too much of a surprise again. And Iliman and Dye dropping to the bench, I think, was a bit of a surprise. But I think we've all been able to see in the last few weeks he hasn't quite been himself. So I'm wondering if they're just managing him a little bit, just maybe the after effects of his recovery from that injury, because it was a long one. So maybe just playing safe on that front. But given how positive Fulham are and how good a season they're having and how much they've enjoyed life against Everton for so long, it's felt. I think this was the 6th game I've covered Everton Fulham, and Everton hadn't won any of them. And, I was fearing the worst. And for 45 minutes it unfolded that way because Everton were woeful for that first half. And they got back into it for massive, massive slice of luck, which they didn't deserve, but they did very, very well to exploit and deserve the credit for what followed.
Absolutely. First question in relation to your Coleman comment there. So Danny Church has said, can you see Coleman leading out the team on Sunday? So I guess you've already answered that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I don't have that much insight information. I have asked Moyes about this. I did after the win on Saturday, and he was keeping his cards not tight to his chest. He's obviously thought about this a lot, and I think we'll think about it a lot this week, and I imagine he'll speak a lot to the player as well. But it feels like it would be fitting for the club captain to have that moment leading the team out, especially with there being the uncertainty over his future, which I think we'll also find out the conclusion of very soon as well. It just feels like a fitting occasion, doesn't it? And so I'd be very surprised if he didn't. And I think that might have been, obviously, it's been important to look at Patterson in recent weeks, but that was the first time we saw Coleman. I think that might be the first time we saw Coleman on the pitch since Moyes returned. And I think a lot of it has been about protecting him to try and make sure that, he gets the finale at the end of the season, that he deserves whatever happens next. And I think, there's an opportunity for him to stay at the club next season. And then for the future, it just depends in what capacity. But it would be fitting for him to start next week, I think. And I think everyone would understand and be on board and probably like to see that, wouldn't they? So,
I mean, Dan, we'll come on to that, but obviously Everton picking up another away win under Moyes, making a little bit of a habit. I just had to go back and just double check the fixtures there, because we have, since David Moyes has come in, we've picked up more than 12 points, but in terms of, we've had 4 away wins, obviously Brighton, Palace, Forest and now Fulham. I mean, we spoke on Friday of how disappointing, I guess, the home form has been, but I guess little bit of positivity with another away win. Did it surprise you?
It did surprise me, yeah. I wasn't the run of form we'd been on. I wasn't expecting anything from the Fulham game, to be honest. It had felt like our season had hit very much its end, and we were completely out of momentum before then. Really, that flurry of results we'd had under Moyes felt like it was waning a bit. But yeah, we've been amazing away from home under him, and I wasn't necessarily expecting that because, from memory, Moyes' first spell, it didn't feel like away form was like a massive part. We certainly never won the big away matches, and I know we've won a lot now since he's come back that I wouldn't necessarily have expected us to win at all. The Forest one was a great one, and they've sort of come in a very different way. I think the Fulham game felt a bit like sort of a role reversal. Felt like if Everton were in Fulham's position, say 10 years ago, chasing Europe, and Fulham had very little to play for, it's the sort of game we would have lost at home. And a frustrating one that sort of knocks your European ambitions against a team that their season's petering out. So it was quite nice to do that to them, really.
Why is it then that you think we managed? Certainly, if you want to focus on specifically under Moyes, why is it that away form has picked up? Because I guess, four of those wins have been fantastic wins, but as you've said, they've been very different.
Yeah.
As Joe mentioned, we didn't start the game well at all against Fulham, but I felt like we did grow into the game, got a little bit of luck with the Mykolenko goal. In terms of comparison to the home form, is it just been maybe the pressure of the final season of Goodison Park? Maybe that's why the form has been poor in that sense, because as we mentioned, it's only been four wins at Goodison. Hopefully it's going to be 5 come Sunday, but you can see a difference, a clear difference for me. Maybe it's confidence, maybe it's the way we set up, in how we play away from home. We're clearly picking up better results.
Yeah, I think expectation probably is a part of it, yeah. And that there is a slight freedom that you will get away from home that we don't necessarily at Goodison, and with the weight around it this season. But I don't know, it feels like the goals we've been scoring away from home are exactly how, it sounds a bit sort of trite, but exactly the sort of goals you want. They're sort of breaking, taking advantage of mistakes, countering, and sort of being a bit more clinical as well. I know we're far from a clinical side still, but I think that's what's changed. Like, I don't think we would have got these results under Deitch because we just got into a rut where we couldn't take a single chance. The Forest one where Decore just, you get that one chance and you score it. It felt a bit like that with Fulham. We had those chances and you just took them. And that's, I think, been the massive change, is just being able to stick it away when you get those openings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Joe, focus on a couple of individual performances from Saturday. Was it Carlos Alcaraz's best game in an Everton shirt for you, do you think? Or
no, I think Palace was his best game. Okay. I thought he was excellent in that game in a more kind of sustained way throughout the night. Like he had his fingerprints all over that win. And it was a very measured performance. Like, he just looked the best player on the pitch for most of that game, certainly for Everton. On Saturday, his impact was substantial and significant, but it was in moments rather than in a kind of like a measured display where he's manipulating the ball and manipulating the game and controlling it throughout. Everton just didn't do any of that in the first 44 minutes. They were very poor. But what Alcaraz did show was that even on a day, on an unglamorous day for a side that has nothing to play for and looked like it was going through the motions for so long and was losing, and agreed with Moyes, who told me at the end that he was heading into the break just happy it was only 1-0. It would have been so easy for him to have fought the same, but it was his alertness that allowed him to seize on Andreas Pereira, win a long throw from nothing, and create the situation from which Mykolenko scored the first goal. And in fact, he had a role in all 3 goals. It was him that was fighting with Ryan Sessegnon in front of the away fans to win the corner that Michael Keane scored from. And it was him that, it was obviously he that played the pass through to Beto for the goal. We did have another moment in the first half. Harrison should have scored when he cut inside on his left. I mean, that was a ball.
It was a weak shot, wasn't it?
He'd done the hard work, and I mean, it probably a little bit, symptomatic of or symbolic of Harrison's Everton career, or certainly this season, where he does so many of the hard things really well. He's such a technically gifted player. It's just that end product, and having managed to cut inside, create the space to work a shot from a decent position on his left foot, then put it so close to Leno, was just so frustrating, and it was just the same story again. But no, Alcaraz was a moments player, I think, the other day, but he showed repeatedly that he can have big moments, and he got moved into the middle in the second half, and that improved his performance as well. And, I've been saying this for a long time, that I think that it's a no-brainer to sign him for the money that he's available for, about £12 million. We know that Everton have got a really complex summer. Yes, it's an exciting summer, but the rebuild and the transition that's going to have to take place is going to require a lot of hard work and a bit of luck to get right. I think that you can have a really cheap and effective and positive opening salvo on the transfer market by just getting that deal over the line or at the start of the summer. He's a player that the fans love. I think he wants to stay. You can see that. I mean, he said that anyway, but the way he gestured to the badge, I think, when he came off and was getting applauded by the fans, obviously, intensified that. And it just feels like a no-brainer. I think, and to be honest, I've spoken to Moyes a lot about him. And he was unconvinced at the start, but he's increasingly positive when you ask him about him. I'd be very surprised if the club wouldn't head in down that direction. So I thought it was a really good performance. The case to make him a permanent signing is even more compelling because of that game. And you know what? Like, it's not just he has got a bit of guile. He has got a bit of creativity. He's got a bit of bite as well. He's so good in transition, which is, like I say, Everton just it feels like haven't had a player like that in a long time. I think Amadou Onana could have been that player, but just the way that Dyche used him and the players around him didn't allow him to be that. But he's just so effective. But he's clever as well. And one of my highlights, kind of away from all the big moments, was in the second half. I think when it was still 1 each, Everton won a free kick deep in their own half, and you saw Pickford walking towards it. And everyone was just the game was just kind of stuck, just waiting for the next thing to happen. And Alcaraz, just from nowhere, he was probably 30 yards from his own goal, just started sprinting down the left wing. There was a big chunk of space, started sprinting. Pickford saw it immediately, played the long ball quickly, caught everybody off guard. Alcaraz brought the ball down and was all of a sudden all sorts of space down the left, and no one had really reacted to it. He plays the ball off to Ndiaye, and eventually the move breaks down. But it's just that kind of quick thinking, that alertness that we just haven't seen from Everton players for so long. Just always having that kind of game awareness, just like he did with the first goal, where we took advantage of the sloppiness at the back for Fulham. He's just got that reading of the game and that intelligence, and I just think he would be an asset certainly for the price he's available at. He had very good moments in what became a very good game for Everton.
I mean, I can see you nodding a lot of things that Joe's saying, Dan. I guess that you agree. And, if he was to be made a permanent signing, where would you see him best playing? Because Moyes has used him in a number of positions. And, he's a player, as Joe said, who maybe Moyes wasn't convinced by, but now he's started to see a little bit more of him. He's having those impact on the games. Is he a player who you see as a number 10? Moyes has used him a couple of times on the left, certainly on the right as well. Would you see him maybe more of a deep lying midfielder? Where would you see him?
Probably a number 10.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing we do lack, or we have lacked as a side for quite a while now, is someone who's sort of very comfortable on the ball behind the striker. And if you are going to be playing with a striker like, you don't know if he's still going to be here, but Calvert-Lewin or Beto, who you're looking to hold it up, you want someone then running onto that who's going to be good on the ball, happy at running at people, taking defenders on. And that's how I think he's best. And I think, for all that Decore has been very effective behind the striker, he's not the most gifted footballer on the ball. And I think a lot of attacks can break down among Everton's front three because of just sort of silly, sloppy losses of possession. And I think you get less of that with Alcaraz. I think he's very confident moving the ball forward, and he's tidier. And I think, I would probably use him there. I mean, I guess you could have him deeper in midfield, sort of a traditional centre midfielder or the more progressive one of two centre midfielders, but I would probably play him behind the striker, I think, yeah.
And Beto obviously seems to have benefited from it as well. I mean, we'll get
your
opinion on both.
Definitely.
But for me, he's a player who continues to prove people wrong. Fair play to him. Now we've mentioned a couple of times on the podcast, he was nearly out the door in January, whether that was going to be a loan deal or a permanent move. Whether you like him or not, whether you think he's a good player, whether you think he can hold the ball up, whether he's not technically gifted or not, he seems to score goals.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's had a little bit of a bad spell in April, but now he's averaging 0.53 goals every 90 minutes. Can't remember the last time a striker had those numbers. So it's a fierce debate on Beto on this podcast. Where do you stand on him?
I've very much come round to him. I was far from convinced in his first season and large part, this season until Moyes came in, really. But he's just a handful, isn't he? Things happen. He makes things happen, and he's scoring more. He's taking his chances. There are still, there were times that he went for a spell of missing one-on-ones, didn't he? Where I think his goal drought sort of began. But yeah, I think he's taken the chances that he's been given by Calvert-Lewin's injuries and changes to the side, whatever. And I just don't think at the minute you can really argue with his goal return. Otherwise, I think he's quite a limited footballer. But if you are scoring what is essentially 1 in 2 for a club like us, where we are at the moment, that is objectively very good. And yes, there are major improvements he could make to his general play, but as a goal scorer, he's done what's been required of him when he's been in the side this season, I think. So yeah, I wouldn't get rid of him this summer. I'd hold on to him for sure.
Certainly wouldn't sell him to Leeds, who could potentially be a rival.
Yeah, not a chance. Not a chance.
I mean, Joe, obviously you were at the game and I didn't manage to watch it myself. I thought, I'm not saying it was like a massive improvement, but there was a number of times where I did feel he had his back to goal and he did hold the ball up and he managed to lay it off. So there's obviously room for improvement there. You discussed and spoke, in detail about Beto on Friday. But I guess, I think he keeps proving people wrong, but I think he cares as well, doesn't he?
He definitely cares.
I mean, if you look at one of his comments here from got a quote from one of the club media, and he's talking about Goodison Park's final game. So he clearly knows how much it means to the people around the club, the fans, everyone involved. He basically says, it's our last dance. I want to be in the history books. I want to score. I want to win. But most of all, I think the win is going to be perfect for the last farewell. So should we get our money on Beto to score the final ever goal at Goodison Park? What do you think?
Oh, no.
No?
Because, I mean, if he starts a game, he's probably not going to finish it. So, obviously, Moyes will need to have a look. This is the best chance that Moyes will have to look at Chimiti. And Calvert-Lewin will be up there fighting to say, I want to have my moment in this occasion as well. And obviously, Breuer probably will as well. So, he's got a final goal. I'd be more confident on betting on him to score the first goal of the last game rather than the last one. He cares. There's no doubt about that. I've sat down and spoken with him. He's desperate. I think he's someone that, he came to football. He came to professional football quite late, and I think he's very, very. I think he's seen what life would otherwise have been like for him if he didn't have the ability that he does have and didn't have this career path didn't open up to him. And he is incredibly grateful for it, and he's incredibly grateful to be at Everton, and he's desperate to prove people. Well, at the start of the season, he's desperate to prove people wrong. Look, we saw the emotion when he scored his first Premier League goal of the season, which was against Fulham in stoppage time, when he left the pitch in tears. That wasn't the breakthrough moment that everybody hoped it would be for him. That didn't come until essentially Moyes had no other choice than to play him because of the injuries elsewhere. But he's taken that, and I asked, it wasn't me actually, I think it was someone else, but Moyes was speaking about Beto in the aftermath of the game the other day, and he's there just saying he's very humble. He's very humble. His work ethic is amazing. He's always doing everything he can to try and get better. I think there's probably a little bit of frustration from Moyes that he's not there earlier in his career, so he can maybe have more of an influence on him as he's developing. But there's no doubt that he wants it really, that he is passionate about making the most of the chances that he's been given to have a career in football. And that he's grateful to be having that chance at Everton. So, like Dan alluded to there, you can't really argue with his goals return, bearing in mind still how little time he's played this season and how all of that time has been in a side that has been very poor going forward. So his goals have kept Everton up this season.
Without a doubt. I couldn't agree more.
Which I'll be reminding everybody when, at the end of the season, we go back to our pre-season predictions and we ask for an unsung hero.
Wow.
Or unexpected hero.
See, I remember this, and this was based on the interview that you did with him, so obviously Joe had a little bit of insight there. So, well done, Joe. Okay, I wanted to speak about Abdoulaye Doucouré on Friday, but we never had the chance. So I think it's still relevant now to speak about him. Let's face it, he started on Saturday. He did a decent job, obviously on the right end of a win with the team. But he, go with you on this one, Danny.
Yeah.
He did speak on a podcast last week. It was Ben Foster's podcast, the Fozcast, and he was basically asked about his future, as you could imagine that he would be. Obviously, if you go back to the Nottingham Forest game, as you mentioned, he scored that goal, but he also, did sign the
Yeah.
contract. So there's obviously a little bit of tongue in cheek with regards to that celebration. But he did make it clear on this podcast that there have been no talks with Everton and his future, that no proposals have been discussed and everything is kind of up in the air. I mean, will he be staying or will he be going? What do you think?
I don't know. It doesn't feel like it to me. If I were in charge, I'm not sure I'd keep him. I think he'll always be a hero for that last day goal a couple of years ago and vital contributions since, and sort of that purple patch when Deitch came in. He'll always, the cult hero sort of in a rough time for Everton. And I think he still can contribute and pop up with really important moments, but I don't know, now feels like quite a natural point for the club and player to say goodbye, really. He's, wrong side of 30, on quite big wages, and not quite contributing what he used to this season. So I'm not sure I'd keep him at Everton. I think, granted, we are going to lose a lot of players this summer, so there is the argument that you reduce that and keep players that the manager trusts, or knows that people around the club trust. But I don't know. It just feels like a natural endpoint for Doucouré at Everton, really, and thank him for what he's done, but shake his hand and move on, really, I think is what I'd do.
I just think it's such a weird, strange situation, Joe, for a player whose contract is running out and then the time to renew on the same terms as lapsed, but they're potentially willing to offer him a new deal. I mean, I think we spoke the other week. If you were from, looking at it from Doucouré's point of view, or anyone's point of view, it doesn't really matter. If you are in a job where they say, well, we're going to offer you less terms, you're going to be a little bit like irked, aren't you? You're surely going to be a little bit annoyed. So I guess from his point of view, can you understand maybe his little bit frustration that, not even just first and foremost, that there hasn't even been like contact or like a few like, well, we're going to discuss your terms in the next couple of weeks, days, or whatever. Because like from what he's saying, there hasn't been any contact.
Yeah, well, this was back end of April, so it's the interview was a couple of weeks old when it came out. So, and I think that he's in the unusual position for him where it's the first time he's going to a summer as a free agent, but I don't think that it's unusual in the sense of not having, or the fact they haven't sat down at all. I don't think any players, or very few players, that work is underway now, but as of when they spoke, and pretty much up until last week or so, a lot of those conversations hadn't been held with players. Like you see Michael Keane telling Chris Beasley that, again, they haven't had a conversation over his future when they spoke after the game against Fulham. I think a lot of that's just been because of where the club's at and where the priorities have been. So, I think that I can understand Doucouré's position, and I think that there's a degree of cherry picking in comments. I think for anybody that's listened to the interview all the way through, he speaks very, very positively about Everton. I've spoken to him a lot, and I have no doubt that he has a great fondness and affection for Everton. So I don't think that should necessarily be forgotten. Obviously, that also shouldn't mean that he gets a contract just because he loves being at Everton. Why wouldn't you? But he is. So I don't think he necessarily thought these comments would be as controversial as they were. I also think that from his perspective, whilst he should be, I think he should be open to compromise. Again, you can probably see where he's saying when he's saying this has been a bad time for a couple of years. I've been one of the players that's consistently delivered big moments over a course of 2 or 3 seasons. He's probably been the only thing that's consistently made a very bad attack actually have some success over recent years. Might not be pretty, but he's the one that's been popping up with the big goals. And the other thing that he can point to is saying, well, not only is Moyes kept with me, but he's scoring in important goals now. He scored the winner against Forest. He scored, I've written this a couple of times. Feels like a long time ago now, and we know what's happened since. We know how this game unfolded. But going into that Leicester game, that was a relegation 6-pointer that had the potential to be a really difficult, nervy game, that did. It wasn't, because Doucouré scored after, 12 seconds or however long it was. He killed the game in the first minute, and after that it was gone as a contest. But if he doesn't score that, we know what Everton have been like over recent seasons. That could have gone a different way. And he got the goal against Manchester United as well. It's not just those moments, but he is a bit of a comfort blanket to managers. He is someone that is in there because he can almost do a job and a half. You can put him in centre midfield, he can do all the defensive work, but because of his energy, his enthusiasm, his athleticism, he can also, get into the box and provide big moments. But he clearly still has value to this side. And I think that, I wrote a piece on Saturday just kind of in which I spoke of his importance. For me, look, I think Everton want to be able to move away from an attack where they're essentially relying on Abdoulaye Doucouré, crashing his way into the box and delivering big moments every now and then. Spoke about this a lot. They want to create a more sustained, coherent attack where you have players that can, deal with the ball, that can move in transition, that can beat players, that are comfortable with the ball at their feet, that are comfortable facing their own goal, with their back to their own goal. Everton want to get there. The question for Doucouré's situation this season is how quickly can they get there? And do you take the gamble of removing your most effective plan A and not having that there as a plan B for next season, just in case in that transition a few things jar and you bring in a couple of attacking players and or you rely on players that are already there and someone gets injured, someone has a bad start, someone struggles to integrate. Well, if Doucouré isn't there, then all of a sudden you could be left without a plan B, and Doucouré's been a very, very effective tool for Everton. I know people talk about the goal against Bournemouth. Everton were only able to be in a position where their fate was in their own hands that season because of a couple of things. Things like Pickford's save from Maddison's penalty, of course, and certain goals. But it's them goals in those hard-fought draws at Forest, at Chelsea earlier on that season, that massive win against Brighton, the 5-1, where Doucouré scores the opening goal and gets 2 on that day. It's not like he's only showing up in big moments every now and then when it really matters. He's doing the hard work in those difficult points, when the cameras aren't quite on Everton before then. You look at the start of last season, he got the goal against Brentford in the game. It was the first game they won that season. It was just so vital to them. So, and then he scores against Chelsea, doesn't he? And just after the points deduction, Everton went on their longest ever winless Premier League streak last season, and it completely coincided with Doucouré falling out of the team. The last win was against Burnley, which was the game that he picked up his first of 2 hamstring injuries. His 2 hamstring injuries, other than the short period he came back in January between the injuries, they lasted the whole duration of that winless run. Like, we might all want to get to a situation where it's a lot prettier and a lot more effective and a lot easier on the eye, a lot more coherent, sustainable, but there's only so much they can do this summer. So that's the dilemma for with Doucouré.
It's the two parties have got to agree as well. I mean, it's fair enough Everton offering a deal, which is obviously going to be in reduced terms, but would Doucouré fancy that? He said himself he's going to have other options.
Well, he has got other options, and that is important. Like, I think that for all I've just said about what he's done in the past, we also have to, Everton have to deal with him as the player that he is now. And yes, like I've just said, he scored 3 goals in relatively recent memory, and he's still starting games. But he is 32, going on 33. He is a player that they might not want to be starting next season. They might want to move away from. Really, like, I think almost Doucouré and Everton can both have different views on his value, and they can both be right in this situation. As contradictory as that might sound, for me, I think that Everton can only do a deal with Doucouré on the basis that he's a squad player next season and will be paid as such. I understand that's going to be the case. I think that the two parties are going to sit down in the next fortnight and discuss this properly. My understanding is that I think Doucouré would like to stay at Everton, and I think Everton would probably like to keep Doucouré, but only on each of their parties' own terms. So the question's not going to be who wants what. It's going to be where they meet in the middle. Everton want to reduce the salary. Will they go high, and will their low point be high enough for Doucouré to accept it? That's where the difficulty is going to be.
I mean, Dan, just sticking with Doucouré, I think for me, ultimately, and this is just any player in the team or anyone we sign, obviously we're just focusing on Doucouré, giving him a contract, and we're basically going to give him a contract on, or we should be giving him a contract on what he can offer in the future, not what he's done in the past. And we can look back on all those things that Joe's just mentioned there, Bournemouth, scoring against Leicester. There's been, really good moments for Doucouré, but it is a case of what can he offer, at least in the next 12 to 18 months, really. And I don't know, where do you stand on that?
I think Joe makes a good point that if you are going through a point of transition, is getting rid of your most effective attacking outlet wise when he can always be there as a sort of big, turn from being a plan A to a plan B. I do see that. I mean, that sort of would be the one, if we could agree on a sort of cheaper salary, essentially, that would be the one point I think I would hold on to Doucouré for, is if he's comfortable being a squad player who is thrown on when Everton need a goal, and you almost use in a sort of how Moyes used Fellaini at United, or how United used Fellaini for so long, then yeah, I could be on board with that. But I just don't see enough from his recent performances. If we distinguish between performances and moments, because he can provide those hugely important moments, I don't see enough from his recent performances to keep him on as a regular first team player on the wages that his current deal is. If I were in charge at Everton, I wouldn't be sanctioning that, I don't think.
Okay, we'll move on to Michael Keane. Joe obviously scoring the second goal for Everton on Saturday. As you mentioned, Chris spoke to him after the game and asked him about his future, and he basically said, I've not had any conversations about it. We'll see what happens. This is my 8th year, and I've loved it. It's been up and down, but I love the club, and I love playing for Everton. I'm glad I got to show what I can do today, and we'll see what happens. So another player, again, who's very much in the same boat as Abdoulaye Doucouré, been with the club for a number of years now, being a part of teams in difficult situations, has shown that he can do a job to an extent in certain moments. But again, he proved that on Saturday with another fantastic goal. But again, another player who the club haven't spoken to. Where do you stand on Michael Keane? 8 years that he's been with the club is insane when you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, like with Doucouré, I don't think the club not having spoken to him is indicative of anything. So, because I think that's been pretty much the situation with most of the players that are heading out of contract. I think that he's had interest from other sides in England and also from the MLS and a little bit in Italy as well over recent months. So it'll be interesting to see where any of that goes. I think Michael Keane's had a good season. He obviously Everton had defensive issues at the start of the campaign. There was a degree of frustration at the end of it that he was starting games, but he wasn't the problem, I don't think. And actually, come the end of it, when Jared Branthwaite came back, I think that there was an argument to say that he was performing better than James Tarkowski, and unlucky to lose his role. He scored big goals as well. He scored the first goal against Bournemouth? He scored that one, didn't he? Obviously, he scored a great goal against Ipswich. So he's popping up with goals. He had a difficult time when he came on against Man City. He's well aware of that himself. It was a difficult game to be. I mean, there probably aren't any harder games to come onto when you've barely played in months and you've got to come on and go in at centre back against that Man City side, with the side that needed to win that game. But he played well, I thought, and because I thought him and I thought Branthwaite were very, very good at the weekend. Whilst I've been quite negative about the performance in general, him, Branthwaite, and Pickford were all excellent. Everton defended the box pretty well. It was everything else that was the problem. It was the midfield that was the problem. The midfield and fullbacks to a certain extent. The issue wasn't that Everton were constantly getting done behind. The issue was that there was too much space and time and freedom for the likes of Harry Wilson, Iwobi, Smith Rowe to find space outside the box and have enough time to be able to put quite menacing shots in. So that was the issue. It wasn't with Keane or Branthwaite. It was nice that he got that goal, and I'm glad that he got that. I think that I'd be surprised if he stayed. Moyes spoke about him in glowing terms. There are lots of players in that squad where I think the expectation for a long time has been that they would Everton would move on from them. But as you get closer to this January and you look at all the work that needs being done, you kind of wonder if actually having someone that knows the place, that the manager trusts and can maybe do a job every now and then, is it more valuable if you can find the terms where everyone agrees on? Like with Doucouré, probably like the same with Calvert-Lewin. If everyone's willing to compromise, there is a value in keeping them on. But I'd still be surprised if Keane stayed on at the minute. But it's a tough one, isn't it? Because you have Branthwaite. Moyes wants to keep Branthwaite, but we all know how there is interest in Branthwaite. So if someone comes in with a mega offer, you can't guarantee he's going to stay. Tarkowski just written a story saying that he's come through with surgery. Well, I mean, his surgery was at the start of the month, but Everton are pleased with how the surgery went and how it's reacted. So that's good news. But we know that he's going to face a summer of rehabilitation. So we don't know what shape he's going to come back into and how long it's going to take him to start the season. And Jake O'Brien, as brilliant as he's been at right back, is inexperienced at centre back. And, Everton will probably need to buy a centre back over this, or acquire a centre back over the course of this summer. Whether that ends up being someone that they need to find to start because either Branthwaite goes or Tarkowski's injury hasn't been as good, recovery isn't as good as we hope it's going to be, or Moyes isn't as convinced by O'Brien, or whether actually all three of them look great, stay, and you just need a fourth choice because of games like this weekend where you do need a fourth choice centre back. Everton will need one. Could they solve that problem early with Michael Keane? I don't think they will. But it's another kind of just like little minor debate going on the back of everybody's heads at the minute, isn't it? So
we were joking, weren't we, Dan, before we pressed the record button that Michael Keane was born or played football in the wrong era, and that maybe if he was a footballer in the 80s, he would have stayed as a striker and could have been a potent goal scorer, because he does score a number of goals. Well, he scored a lot of goals in his Everton career for a defender anyway.
Yeah, he's a great finisher, isn't he? He's a real handful in the box. Always a real threat from corners. That goal against Spurs, was that last year or the year before? Year before, I think, wasn't it? Unbelievable. You rarely see a better strike of a football
Fantastic
than that.
Goal.
I like Michael Keane. I think he's a real pro. I think, there have been moments where he's struggled at the back, but I think he's been a good figure probably to have around the club for the time he has been, and I think he seems to he's fallen out of favour. He's not a starter anymore. He did come here on big money as an England international, and his career's not quite hasn't continued in that sort of trajectory. But you get the sense that he's just someone who gets his head down, comes in and tries to do a job when he's asked. And like Decore, he's someone who's come up with some huge moments for Everton over recent years. So I think he's I've got a lot of time for him, despite the errors that can creep into his game.
I think if he leaves, which I think he will, I think he's got no problem getting another Premier League club. Obviously, it's going to be a club probably fighting relegation near the bottom, but even a club in the Championship who are high up in the table, I wouldn't be surprised. So he's got a future in the game. It's not like if he leaves Everton, his future's over. I think this was my point last week, is these players are fighting for the future. Yeah, they might be fighting for their Everton future, and we're hoping that it's a bright new future with the stadium and stuff like that. But they know that even if they leave Everton, they can continue on playing for a number of years. That includes Decore as well. And there's a number of players who are out of contract, isn't it? Which we don't really need to go into. Let's just move on, Joe. What a quick word on this, because I know we've done an article on it, but Everton have basically confirmed that Angus Kinnear has started his role as Everton's CEO today. So I'll just read the quote from Angus, which the club sent over. It is a tremendous honour to be joining Everton. This is a club with a huge and passionate fan base, steeped in proud history, with enormous potential thanks to the vision of our ownership and the move this summer to an awe-inspiring stadium. So another, I guess, piece of the jigsaw in the in the boardroom,
it is. It's going to be really interesting to see the impact that he has. There's a lot of change at Everton this season. Or this summer, there's a change in the squad that we know is going to happen. There's a change in home, that transition we know is going to happen. There's also this shift behind the scenes as well. So they're moving away from the director of football model, and there really is going to be quite a significant culture shift, I think, behind the scenes at Finch Farm. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. On the one hand, it's probably not ideal that that's playing out at the same time when there are so many other big projects underway at the club, but if you look at Kevin Farewell going and Angus Kinnear coming in, I know obviously they're different roles, but we know that Kinnear will be quite hands-on from the footballing side of things. Well, beyond that, obviously Farewell's going because the Freakins weren't going to offer him a new deal. But there are other people, obviously the recruitment chief who works so closely with Farewell, Dan Purdy, he's going. Dan Mashish, one of the player development coaches, is going over to the Middle East. James Vaughan, who was recruitment for the academy, is going. These were all people that brought in by Kevin Farewell as part of his vision to overhaul things behind the scenes at Finch Farm. Most of those people are going on their own terms. I think that's probably to be expected because obviously Farewell brought them in. Farewell's going. You can understand why they might look for alternative, challenges. But it's a lot of new faces that are going to have to come in to replace some of those roles. A lot of change and a lot of instability at a time when Everton need to get a lot of things right. So it's going to be really interesting.
Absolutely. Okay, 2 kind of final points. I want to talk about Goodison's future, and obviously we will discuss Goodison's farewell. I've got plenty of podcasts this week to discuss that, but I think it's only fitting that we do at least touch on that today. Dan, obviously, Goodison's future. Like I say, I wanted to speak about this Friday, but we'll bring it over. Talking point this past week, what's going to happen to Goodison. And, we did mention in one of our previous podcasts that we believe the club were edging towards keeping Goodison in some form or capacity to accommodate the women's team. There's no confirmation of that, but, reports have suggested that those plans are kind of moving forward. Take away the Goodison farewell out of it for now. And the sentimentality about it all. Is this a good thing for Goodison and the club itself that we would keep the stadium and give it to the women's team effectively?
I don't know if I can take the sentiment out of it, really, to be honest, because Goodison Park is just completely it's just an emotional thing for me. So the idea of seeing this summer a bulldozer going through it is almost too miserable, too hard to even envisage. So I like the idea of them retaining it. I think it's, it's a football ground, but it's cliched, isn't it? But it is more than that. It's a heritage asset. It's a culture. It's a huge part of what this city is. So if you can retain it and keep finding a viable purpose for it, I'm very in favour of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. That would literally be to sum up my point on that. I completely agree, and I think it's really good if this happens. You're right there, Joe. It's really good forward thinking from the Freakins in terms of long-term planning because you never know what the women's game is going to be like in the next couple of years. But when I said take sentimentality out of it, what I meant was I've seen a couple of people going, well, what's the point in the final game if we're going to keep Goodison? But I don't know if that has any relevance to it, really. The final game on Sunday is the final game. It doesn't matter if Goodison stays for other reasons. It's like you said, I don't want a bulldozer going through it.
Yeah, and if Goodison does become the home of the women's team and the under-21s, game might change in the future, but at the minute, you're not going to get 40,000 people descending on Goodison Road every other Saturday anymore. So I don't think it does overrule the sentiment of Sunday, to be honest, because it's an end for most people who wouldn't be going back to Goodison week in, week out. It is the end of that. It's the end of Everton's men's first team playing at Goodison, which is a huge thing. So no, I don't think it does change it massively. To be honest, it's still such a huge moment for the club that they have to get right.
I mean, I guess we're not going to get any confirmation or decision from Everton until at least after the final game, are we, Joe? What are your thoughts on it? I can't remember what you've said in the past when we spoke about it, but is this a good thing that the Freakins are potentially moving towards keeping Goodison?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's a footprint that's still going to have huge significance for Everton. The land, the plot, given the size of the plot and the area that it's in, it's not something they can going to be able to sell for a huge amount of money. So there isn't really a huge financial value to getting rid of it. And I think I alluded to this on one of the pods recently. It's not just Goodison, it's everything around it that holds significance, like some of the statues and the gate, the Dixie statue and the gates, and you kind of think that it's still going to be hallowed territory for Everton's, no matter what happens with the stadium move. So what I'd kind of rather have is the Everton retaining control and responsibility for the area, or for that part of the area, or at least some part of the area, and hopefully making the most of it rather than just handing it over to developers or the council or someone else and then hoping that they do it justice. Mm-hmm. There's a chance that it could have become a bit of a forgotten area for Everton, but I don't think this will happen. Obviously, we know there was the legacy project And I imagine that there'll be features of that within this. Look, I don't know how it's going to work, but Goodison isn't going to be Goodison as we know it, even if it stays. And I think we probably have to be prepared for that. I imagine that they will try and build stuff into its footprint to make it more viable, whether that be businesses associated with the club or the space that's rented out to other people. I don't know, but I think it's a good thing. I can understand the jarring of emotions between people that are now thinking, well, actually, I might, they'll sat there on Sunday and be thinking, I might end up being back here to watch a football game at some point in the future. That is a little bit weird.
I think that was some fans' concerns.
I think that's understandable. But look, club are offering every season ticket holder a chance to buy their seats. So, I mean, like, if you look at, they're only going to be embarking on scales like that if the ground is going to end up looking different. And I think that when you look at, say, for instance, the announcement for Angus Kinnear's arrival today, he's coming in as CEO. Well, the person that's held that position for a couple of years now has been Colin Chong. And if you look at his new responsibilities, not only are they overseeing the transition to the new stadium and the regeneration of the area around there, but the announcement also says that he'll be looking at the future and handling the future of Goodison Park, which I suspect will be more than just the sale or whatever it will be. So, I wrote a story last week about the under-21 Southport being used. Everton have been using Southport for the under-21s for quite a long time now. They had the chance to extend that agreement, but they chose not to. They let the deadline lapse. So under-21s won't be playing at Southport next season. So where are they going to play? Well, I think the idea is that if the women move to Goodison and all of a sudden Walton Hall Park becomes more available to them, and there's also the opportunity to eventually play games or some games at Goodison Park as well. So I think keeping that site within the Everton family, I think, is a good move if that's what happens. I think it's probably will have a financial sense as well. And I really do think that it then provides kind of a heritage opportunity for the club as well. We see so often clubs leave areas that are significant to them and essentially abandon them as they go to a different area. Well, this allows Everton to retain a footprint in that area, and that's good for that local area, for the community, for the businesses in there. Obviously, it's not going to be the same extent, but it still means that the club still has some ownership for what happens next in that area, and I think that's a good thing, not just for the club, but also for the city.
I guess, Dan, just finishing off from what Joe was saying there, but it's a good place to finish. Seems as you're obviously on the pod for first time in a while. Probably not going to be on for the rest of the week. What does Goodison mean to you? I don't want to put you on the spot or make you teary-eyed or anything like that, but I guess, it's going to be a difficult week for a lot of people. But what are your thoughts on going into the final week and the final game?
I am very sad about it. As exciting and as brilliant as Bramley-Moore is, having been there for the test event, it is amazing. And that did sort of calm my nerves a bit. I think the last time I was on was actually after the first test event. But Bramley-Moore will be great, but it'll never be Goodison. And nothing will ever be like Goodison. Like, I know everyone thinks their football ground's the best in the country, but ours is. It's exactly what a football ground should be. Completely rooted in that part of the city, surrounded by terrace houses, pubs, takeaways, chip shops. It's like walking down Goodison Road is what a Saturday at a football game should feel like. And then you get in, and it's just perfect. Everything about it is perfect and enclosed and nasty. And the ground shakes when Everton score. The sound of the wooden seats hitting back when Everton get a corner, you don't hear that anywhere else. There's just those little quirks that, I love about it. And for all the miserable memories of recent years, there are so many happy memories there, and I'll miss it hugely, massively.
Oh, well put. Fantastic stuff. It is just a mix of emotions for me. Happiness, sadness. Sunday's obviously going to be sad, and there's going to be a lot of things going on. For me at the moment, because I'm so busy this week, we all are, don't get me wrong, but I just can't actually think about it. I want to get through this week, get everything done, and then start focusing on Sunday. Joe, I'm sure you'll be on a pod again on Friday, but just to emphasise on what Dan said and to finish off, it's a huge week in in the history of Everton Football Club, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely seismic. So, yeah, a lot of pressure on the club to get things right. Hopefully they do. We'll have to wait and see. And just try and take every opportunity to get down. I'm down there tonight, actually. So,
Okay.
yeah, the Everton Heritage Society have got their annual Dixie Dean Awards, which they're handing out to Derek Temple, FA Cup winner, tonight. So going down there for that ceremony. And yeah, you know what? I'm obviously very privileged to be in the job that I am. And one of the things that I've kind of really tried to do over the last few games is just take quite often I'm one of the first people in the stadium, and almost every time I'm one of the last people to leave the stadium. So I get quite a lot of time to walk through the concourse and the seats and look at the pitch and try and take it all in when not many other people are there. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. And yeah, it's something I've enjoyed doing. I'm glad that I've been able to do over recent weeks. And no, I'm very lucky to have been able to do so. So.
And we've got to get a win, Dan, surely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, Seamus Coleman scores a late winner and Everton win the last game at Goodison. That's what I want to see.
That's what I was going to ask. A convincing 5-0 win or a last-minute winner?
Last-minute winner.
Winner.
I want a last huge Goodison, massive explosion after a last-minute winner.
Don't do that to us. We can't have the Goodison farewell being 89 minutes of we're not going to beat Southampton. What the hell is going on? Surely.
I don't know. I'd rather that somehow. I don't know why, but I'd rather that than romp into a 5-0 win.
Oh.
A bit of late drama to sign off.
Oh.
Well,
I know it makes your life hard.
Hopefully Southampton, having got the point against Manchester City to not be the worst Premier League team, they've got that out the system now. So there's nothing riding on the game. There's nothing riding on the game really anyway as a league position. They've got that out the system. They should just come and enjoy the day and let Everton
let
I
Everton
mean,
win.
you say there's not a lot right. I mean, it's really significant for Everton with the way the results went at the weekend. You know, if Everton win, I mean, they will already know what they need to do because both Man United and Spurs are playing on Friday. But given their defeats yesterday, even if both those sides win on Friday when they play on Friday nights, if Everton beat Southampton, they will definitely finish above Spurs. They would then there'd have to be like a goal difference, minor miracle to finish behind Man United. So all of a sudden they're guaranteed then to finish with a win against Southampton. They're essentially guaranteed to match last season's finish. I mean, there's an emotional significance to finishing above Man United and Spurs, but there's also the financial one as well, and gives them a platform to then hopefully stay above Wolves and West Ham, and that does mean millions of pounds, which is important at the end of a financial year where PSR probably won't be problematic for Everton, but they will be close enough for things like that to matter. So,
absolutely. Well, any final thoughts, lads, before we do go? We are back Wednesday with another live show around about 11 o'clock, so keep an eye out for that one. But yeah, any final thoughts?
No, not really.
That's it for me.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, well, thank you for everyone who jumped on the live stream, and thank you for everyone who listened on, your audio platforms, Apple and Spotify. That is all for today's show. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Joe Thomas and Dan Haygarth, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.